Hello, my beautiful people, and welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about Deadly Vows, which is a 1994 Lifetime movie. Um, so let's get started. We have an older gentleman who is playing football with some younger guys in the park, and they're purposely tackling this man and dropping him to the ground just to prove, oh man, we don't even know why you're playing with us. And he walks away with his friend limping. And his name is Tom. Tom drives a fast food truck, and I don't know, it's just like he's an older guy who appears to want to be younger because he's talking on the little radio that's inside the truck. And I don't know, it's just like he tries to put on a persona that is obviously not him, but is who he wants to be. Then we have Tom on a double date with his friend from the park, Dwight, and their wives. And he gets a strike, but then he gets upset that his wife, I guess, isn't as excited as he wants her to be about the strike. And she makes a comment like, "You're right, Tom. Too bad the 11 o'clock news wasn't here to see it," or something like that. So he gets upset and walks off. And while he's at the register to cash out, he meets a young girl by the name of Bobbi. And we know that because it's printed on her t shirt and then on the back of her shirt. So this is obviously like a work shirt. It has where she works at. And when he tells her that he just got a strike, she's more enthusiastic about it. So that makes him notice her more. And so he shows up to her job, to talk to her and pursue her. And he takes her home from work. And this, oh my God, it's just like a parent, though. It's like she was late from work, and while they're sitting down having dinner, she tells her dad, like, that's the start of the conversation. It's dead silent at the table. And she's like, "Bobbi was late from work today." And Bobbi was like, "Mom, really?" And she's like, "You can almost set a time to when she's gonna walk through the door." And it's just like, okay, so she's late this one time and you feel the need to bring this up and talk about this. Um and then we see like Tom is just tired of his mundane life. He does the same thing over and over. And him and his wife Nancy, like they get into an argument about it. He's like, "I'm tired of the same old thing." So he jumps into his car and he goes to Bobbi's house in the middle of the night. And like he gets her attention somehow, and she comes outside, and they're at the lake throwing rocks and talking. And then they're making out in his car, and he also has one of those little radios in his car. So he gets her to talk on there and telling these guys, like, "I got a hot young babe with me." And she gets on there, and they just sound so excited to hear her voice. And it's like, my God, you guys are a bunch of losers. And this is obviously all you guys do is just sit on here and talk to each other and I guess lie about having girls, so then you have to actually prove that you have one. It's just weird. Um so the next, well, what appears to be the next day, Bobbi, while at work, she's just staring at her coworker. It was creepy because it's just like she wasn't saying anything. She just kept looking over at her to the coworker is like, "What is it?" And she's just so excited to tell her coworker that she met this amazing guy. And when the coworker asks for more details, she tells her, "Well, he's obviously married." And Bobbi is upset about this. So when she gets off and goes outside to see him because he's obviously waiting for her, she asks him, like, "Are you married?" And he says, "Well, if you want to know anything about me, just ask me. I'm not married. My brother," is it Tim? I think it was either Tim or Jim. His brother's married, but he's not married. So he takes her to the bowling alley that he always goes to, and like they're bowling together, they're kissing, but Dwight and his wife are also there, and they're just watching this, but they don't say anything to Tom about it. Um, there's a picnic or a fair going on, and of course, like the whole town is there and shows up, and Bobbi shows up with her parents, and she sees Tom with his wife, but she tries to play like she doesn't know who she is. So Dwight is there's like a part sectioned off where he has like some explosive bombs or something like that. And so when he sees her, he's just like, "Oh, hey, Bobbi, hey, don't step too close. This is dangerous." She's ignoring all of that. She's like, "I need to talk to you. So can you come over here?" Who is Nancy? And at first he's like, "You, come on, don't do that." She's like, "No, who is Nancy?" And he tells, don't play dumb. You know exactly who she is, and basically tough luck you had to find out this way or you met her like this. But at the end of the night when it's time for the fireworks, Tom puts down a blanket right next to Bobbi and her parents. And Nancy is trying so hard to pull him away. Like, "Oh, I see another spot right over there." Like, no, don't do this. Because when he was introducing them to each other, it was just like, he didn't say that this was my wife. He just said, "Bobbi, this is Nancy. Nancy, this is Bobbi." So when she talked to Dwight, and he tells her, like, "You know exactly who she is." So it's like they both could tell what was going on. So Nancy was trying so hard not to sit by them, but of course he puts the blanket down and forces Nancy to lay on his chest. So while he's like stroking her hair with his right hand, he's gliding his left hand up Bobbi's thigh. And the thing that makes this so awkward, Tom is either close to 40 or he's over 40, and Bobbi is only 19. And so after that, she based, like after the night of the picnic or the fair or whatever it's called, um, Bobbi doesn't want to see him anymore. She's trying to break it off. But he basically like shows up at her work all the time, is calling her, and it's just like he tells her that he wants to be with her and he wants to get married to her. And she's like, "You're already married." But he swears that he has a way of making Nancy want to get a divorce from him and leave. And they go and get quote unquote married because he has to get married under Tim. He tells her in case they look it up, of course, because Tim's not married and Tom is already married. So, of course, this isn't legal. But in her mind, it is. And then after that, he goes home to lay up under Nancy after he spent like this weekend with Bobbi. He continues to go back and forth between the two women, just living this double life. And then, when it seems like nothing is going to happen with Nancy, like they're just going to continue their day to day life, he then goes to Dwight to get him to give him one of those explosives or to make him an explosive. And then he writes himself a threat, then shows it to Bobbi. And, of course, now she's worried, like, "We need to show this to the police." And he says, "No, I'll take care of it. There's not really anything I can do about it because I don't know where it came from or if they're serious." Then he pulls up to the bowling alley and tells her to go inside, but don't let anybody know that you came with me or that you talked to me or anything like that. So when she goes inside, Dwight and his wife are there. So, and they just greet her with open arms. That's the thing that gets me. Because it's like, I can see you not like having bro code. I can see if you want to honor the bro code and not say anything, but you also don't have to accept this girl with open arms. It's like they were very friendly with her. And it's just like, no, there's no way I like we'd have a friendship because it's almost like that's what they have as well. Knowing that this is his friend's sidekick, it's just like you don't have to be outright rude, but you also don't have to be as friendly as they were. Um, so she comes in like, have you guys spoken to Tom? Have you seen Tom? And of course they say no, and she says she hasn't heard from him. So then we hear an explosion outside, and she runs outside screaming his name. He blows up his car, telling the detectives that he was knocked out and like somebody came up from behind him and knocked him out. And he was out for a minute, but when he came to, he heard the hood close and then the car blew up. And he shows the detective the note that somebody sent him. And the detective is kind of looking at the paper like, somebody sent this to you. Like, what am I supposed to do with this? So, and then not he, Nancy comes home to see Tom and Bobbi in the kitchen, and she is, of course, suspicious. She's like, what's going on? And they're like, oh, we made lunch. She's like, I don't want to hear none of that. What is going on with you two? And he tells Bobbi, to go outside. And then he flips the whole situation around on Nancy. He's yelling at her. He's like, you want to know what's going on? Here's what's going on. Like, my car got blown up. I was threatened. Uh, his routes have to be taken over. So he has a driver now, so he has to sit on the passenger side to do his routes. And then this nice girl does this for me, and she makes food, and then you come home and have the nerve to insult her. And then he makes her go outside to apologize to Bobbi, which I find mind blowing actually, because it's like you're not gonna. First of all, you can't make me do anything, and I'm not going to apologize to anybody. I don't care how loud you scream, how upset you are, because it looks fishy. And then for Bob, I don't know, because I'm not gonna say she's like not all there, but it almost seems that way, because it's just like, how do you convince him or let him convince you? I'm sorry, to go get fake married and then tell you that their relationship is basically over and there's nothing really going on. But when you get inside this lady's house, you make sure to call her Mrs. and to address her as his wife. Um, and so after she apologizes, Tom goes to Dwight and gets another explosive. And at first, not Bobby, excuse me, Dwight didn't want anything to do with it. He's like, no, I'm not doing that. You already got one. I don't want to be a part of whatever scheme you have going on. And he threatens Dwight, and Dwight gives him another explosive. So now we have Bobby coming around even more to their house, pretending to be friendly with Nancy, like acting as if they all have a friendship together. And she takes Nancy shopping for an up and coming trip that Tom and Nancy are supposed to be taking together. And she tries to get her to buy, excuse me, like more tight fitting clothes, and basically trying to give her advice on how to look good for her husband. But you want to act as if you didn't know anything. That's what I don't get. It's like you can't pretend to play naive or ignorant to the situation when you played a part in this. Um, so when they get back home, Tom asks Bobby to take him to another town, and Nancy's like, "Oh, I can take you," because they both have their own cars, so they still at least have one car amongst them too. And he's like, "Oh no, Bobby can take me. You just go on in the house." So him and Bobby leave, and they stop somewhere, and he calls Nancy on the payphone to tell her to come pick him up. And she's like, what happened to Bobby? And he says, oh, her little piece of junk car broke down on us, so I need you to come pick me up. So she gets in her car to go pick him up. And while she's at a stoplight, her car ignites like on fire, but she manages to jump out, and like she lands on the sidewalk. And when the police get there and they're checking out her car, the same detective that was there for Tom's car, he sees her now. And they find four little explosions that didn't fully ignite. Otherwise, Nancy would be dead. And the detective says, I know someone who's going to be very disappointed. And of course, then we see Tom walking up, hey, that's my wife. Where's my wife? And it's just like, your wife is fine. And isn't it funny that someone blows up your car, now someone blew up your wife's car? And Tom gets into the back of the ambulance with Nancy, and she sees him and she's like, what are you doing here? I thought you were in the other town. And he claims to have gotten another girl to give him a ride. And when he got back into town, he saw her car and he ran right over. So the next day or later on that night, Tom calls Bobbi's house, but her dad picks up the phone and he pretends to be somebody else. And her dad tells him that Bobbi can't come to the phone because she's talking to the police. And Bobbi's story is the Westons are like her best friends. She claims to have met Nancy first at the bowling alley, and then through meeting Nancy and coming over to her house is how she met Tom. And the detective checks out the story with Nancy, and Nancy's like, no, she is engaged to a friend of theirs, meaning her and Tom's, um, and they would all go bowling together. And then it's like an afterthought. She thinks about it and says, funny thing though, I never saw them together, for them to be quote unquote engaged. So the detective also shows up to Bobbi's job and he thinks that, she thinks that he's there to talk to her. Oh, excuse me. But actually, she's there to talk to, he's there, excuse me, Lord, to talk to her coworker. And the coworker tells him everything, like she was so excited about this guy that she's dating. She started dressing different. She started taking better care of herself. And she even says, like she told me that he married her. And so then he takes Bobbi in for questioning again. And she tries to continue to lie like she doesn't know what's going on. She doesn't know anything. They're just friends. But the detective pulls out the marriage license between her and Tom, or better yet, Tim, and tells her she better start talking or she'll be guilty of conspiracy to commit murder. Then Tom is arrested for arson, bigamy, explosion and firearm violation, and attempted murder. When the story hits the papers, Bobbi is fired from her job. Her manager or boss tells her, we can't have this kind of um, light shined on us, so we're going to have to let you go. So Bobbi's dad gets her a lawyer, like to try to cover her tracks or protect her. And she tells the lawyer, I'm his wife, and a wife can't testify against her husband. And I had to laugh because the way the lawyer looked at her, it was like, okay, first of all, that's not true. And you're not really his wife, right? Like, you have to know that. Um, and so Tom is still in jail, while this whole thing is going on. And while he's working out, he hears another inmate, like they're having a conversation about something that happened. And one of the guys is like, if that was me, I would have iced him. And so Tom goes over to talk to that same guy. And Apparently, it looks like he asked the guy, to help him out, because the next thing we see is a masked guy climbing up into Bobby's window, but her dad hears, like something outside the house. So he catches him, and the guy runs off after punching Bobby's dad. So then we have the detective trying to get Nancy to testify, but of course Nancy can really use that line, like, that's my husband. I'm not going to testify against my husband. Bobby is snatched out of her car at her new job because, of course, after she was fired and everybody knows the situation, the only job that she could get is being a waitress. So while she's outside, she is snatched out of her car by what appears to be that same guy, still with the mask on, or, stockings, because it wasn't really a mask. And he gets the guy who's inside to unlock the door and let them in. So when he does, he forces them behind the counter and he shoots and kills both of them. Then after that, Nancy agrees to testify, and Tom is sentenced to 20 years. So she's like pacing the hallway, and Tom comes out in handcuffs, and she starts to walk down the stairs, walk away from him. And he calls out to her, and he says, "Nancy, how could you testify against me? I've always loved you. Don't you know that?" And she glares at him and just walks away. And the movie ends almost as it began, with some guys playing football, but this time it's not him. He's off to the side bragging about having Bobby, like having this young girl to basically do whatever he said. And it's just like, how can you brag about having her? And then I guess, like, it was never like put together that it was him that had her killed, but it's just like, how do you brag about somebody that you basically had murdered, even if for a point in time you had her to do whatever you said? And it was just so creepy. But yeah, this is another movie that's also based on a true story, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. Have a beautiful day. Peace.